Hello everyone, welcome back to my class. So we have seen the implementation part in the previous video. So we have written a coding for adding a books, issuing a books, printing a transactions, right? So setting up the user interface. For all this we have seen the implementation part. Now we will see the implementation part for placing and processing the olds. Okay, so you already know the definition, that is what is placing, what is processing, right? So means we now, in order to place a old for a book, that a book been issued to some other person, now I want the same book, so in such situation I am going to place a old, right? So we will see the coding part. You can just recall the sequence diagrams and the use case diagrams. Okay, so I will follow the same sequence and the use case diagram logics here, and I will write up the coding. So you can just see here, we have first maintain a linked list, means we need to maintain number of olds that can be placed in a library system. So that is why first we need to set up. So you have got a, that is a list, okay, so which is creating a variable called olds, and it is been created with the keyword new. So you have got a class that is a linked list, okay, default constructor we are using, okay, so which is going to be of type private. So means it is going to contain the, that is it is going to create a variable or reference variable or objects, that is a name as a olds, okay. So it is going to point to a linked list, or that is a constructor, okay. So now we will see, so it is got a method place a old, okay. So what are all the old you are going to place, okay, so that will be stored in this old object, and which is of type old only. And then you can just see a means we are going to use that object olds dot add a old, means it is going to add up all the requisition in order to be used to place the waiting condition for a books that is being issued, okay. So that is what we have taken in the first part. So that is only for placing the old. So this part, so this is for placing the old, this logic is for placing old, okay. So that is we need to create a constructor, so that is a linked list we are going to use, so which contains the list of olds that is being placed in a library system, okay. So we have created an object for the same. So then we are going to use that object and we are going to invoke a method called add. So that method, it is going to add up all the old that is being placed into a library system, okay. So that is the small pseudo code, okay. So just a pseudo code that's been written for placing a old, okay. Next we will see how to process the old. So the coding part I have written here in order to process the old. Process the old means we need to process the request that is done by the user, means he was in a waiting state, now I need to issue the book to that person after the book has been written from the person who got that book, right. So we will see the coding part for the same. So you can just see here, you have a method called place old, so that we used in this one also, that is placing old, okay. So the same method I have used here, place old, and which is containing the parameters old, which is of the type old, okay. So now we have got a for loop, that is iterator. So it is going to iterate, okay. So number of elements that is present, okay. So it is going to iterate through a list, okay. So we have created a list here, so means it contains all the elements, all the olds that is being placed, so which will be having the data here. So I am going to perform iterator function on that one, so on that particular list, linked list, which contains the all information, and you can just see I am using as next, okay. So as next it is going to fetch the next old that is there in a list, means he is imagining that, so you will be having so many olds for the same book, okay. So you will be having so many olds for the different book also. So you have got two options there. So in order to process it, we need to first check it out. I means we should have an imagination that there is plenty of olds, okay. So in that concept it has been taken as next, okay. So next means go for the next old, so next old, like that, okay. So iterator operation. So that is what called here, and then it is going to check with that one, so means continuous looping condition, so which is of type old. So it is going to iterate on that one, so next operation, so incrementally it is going to be updated for the each and every old that is been placed. Okay, so then it is going to remove that one, so means in order to process it, what we need to do, first we need to take out the processing operation, old processing. Okay, so take out the particular old from the list. Okay, so that is why he has taken iterator dot remove, means once we have selected the next element in a list. Okay, so that is the old, next old in a list. Okay, so we need to remove that one and we need to process it. Okay, if that old is valid, okay, the old which I removed from the list, if it is that is old, means that is a valid. Okay, if that is a valid, so then what you need to do, you need to return that old, means you need to return that particular book, so that is been weighted by that person. Okay, so that is what written in this particular coding part. So if not, it is going to return null. Okay, means none of the person has been given operations, or none of the person has placed the old. So in such situations also it is going to return null. So in this particular, so it is going to process the old, First pseudo code is just focused on how to place the old. Second pseudo code, this one, so I have put a dotted here. So this part focused on how to process the old. So in order to process the old, you have taken a place old method, within that you have got a old. So here it is going to use a for loop condition in order to iterate through a list of elements, means list of elements here is the number of olds that can be used, and it is going to use a as next operation where it is going to increment the means current element, and then it is going for next element. So it will just go on with the next elements. Okay, so when you find out the old operation or a old that is placed for a particular book, so you are going to remove that from a list. Okay, so then you are going to check it whether that old is valid or not valid. Okay, means the book ID, the member ID who placed is valid or not valid, that will be checked there, and after that it is going to return that old. Okay, means that will be issued to the person who requested it, otherwise it is going to return that is a null. So there is no values, or there is no values for the old. Okay, so there may be some operation that has been exceptional cases, so you can return the null also. Okay, so that is a small logics pseudo codes in order to place a old and process the olds. Next we will see that is how the is valid is going to check the serialization. Okay, so we will see with this coding part. So you can just see there, so here you have got a public class old implement serializable, means here the old operation or old class, it is going to have complete information of serializable. Serializable is nothing but the operations are one after the other in a sequence. Okay, so it contains a variable called book, which is of type book. Okay, so and then you can just see you have a member which is of type member, and you have got a member that is a date which is of type calendar, and a method called old. So within that method old, you have member, book, and the duration. In order to process the old, so you should have this field, that is the member ID, book ID, and the duration. So that is why he has used this operator there. So this dot book, it is going to refer to the current value that is being placed in the method old. Okay, so that is this dot book, it is going to refer the book value that is being passed as a parameter, and this dot member, it is going to refer the current member. And then you are going to have a date that is equals to new Gregorian calendar. So means it is going to fetch a standard format calendar, and it is going to take the date from there. And then you have got date dot set time in milliseconds. So within the bracket you have got system dot current time milliseconds. So which is going to give us, means it is going to take up the basis of the computer timing. So whatever the time it is running in your system, that will be taken as a basis format. So that is why it is going to taken system dot current time millis. Okay, so it is going to fetch the time that has been running in your system. Okay, so then you have got date dot add so which is going to take up your date from the calendar. Okay, so calendar dot date, and it is going to mention the duration. Okay, so that is the few of the information where we are going to maintain. So how we are going to retrieve this data, or how we are going to accept this one? So for that you have got a public member get member method, so it is going to return the member, and then you have got a public book get book, so it is going to return the book details, and then book public calendar get date, so it is going to retrieve the date. Okay, means it is going to accept the date that can be given through the keyboard, and it is going to return the same. And next you have got a boolean is valid, means whether the operations is valid or not valid, so it is going to check it out, so it is going to display a current time and in a milliseconds. Okay, so that is the one operation. Okay, so next we will see how to remove that old. Okay, so the pseudo code for removing the old. So you have got public boolean remove old. Okay, so within that you have got a parameter book ID, which is of type string. Okay, so within that you can just see you have a variable removed, and which is of type boolean. So boolean means you need to have a true or false condition, right? So it is already initialized to false. So now we will see for iteration. So list iterator, so you have got a iterator object there. So it is been equal to books on hold dot list iterator. Okay, so it is going to call up the iterator function, okay, on the number of books that is being placed as a old, and it is going to have a iterator dot as next. So it is going to search the element list elements, and then it is going to fetch the next old that is there in a list. Okay, so the same will be stored in a old object, so that is the old with this with the object old, and which is of type old iterator dot next. So it is going to store that next old that is been there in a list. Okay, and then in a ID, so which is of type string, so it is going to have the information of the old book. Okay, so the book which is being placed old, so that will be stored in a ID. Okay, so then you have got a if ID equals the book ID, so if it is matching with the book ID, then the transaction, it is going to call the transaction method that we discussed in the previous class. So transaction dot add, it is going to add to a transaction, that is a new transaction. So which is the type of transaction as a remove. Okay, removing the old. Okay, so it is going to remove, and that is a book name, and the title will be taken there. Okay, so then you can just see there removed is equal to true. So it is going to initialize, that is it is been removed from the library, so that is why it is been true. In initial case the book has not been removed from the library, so that is why it is been set as a false. Now after this transaction, so if the book ID is equal to the book ID that is present, so then it is going to be removed from the system. So then it is going to update the same in a iterator dot remove, and this will call up, so till the n numbers of old is being removed from the library system. Okay, so that is the pseudo code for removing the book. Okay, so these are the few of the implementation details how we can implement the designs that what we have done in the previous sessions, right? So that is we have seen a implementation for that is issuing book, adding book, okay, printing a transaction, placing old, processing old. For all this we have seen the implementation coding right now. Okay, next we'll see how to do the serialization, okay, in a last topic in this particular second module. So we'll see how to do the serialization. Serialization is nothing but, so you are going to maintain the sequence of operations, okay, so one after the other. So you are going to means you are not going to give rise to a conflicts there. Okay, so we'll see how to maintain the how to maintain the execution of the programs without having any conflicts. Okay, so we'll see that one. So that is next topic is storing and retrieving the data. We'll see that one. So under this we are going to study the first topic, that is Java serialization. Java serialization. So that is here what we are going to study here in this particular topic is, so we are going to have storing and retrieving the library object, means we are going to maintain an object for the library case study here, that is a library system. Okay, so now what we need to do, we need to store the same, okay, the same object which contains a huge data. Okay, so we need to store the same and we need to retrieve the same. Okay, so how we are going to do that one? So in under that you are going to have a Java serialization. So this Java serialization, why it has been used means, so in order to maintain the data, okay, to store the data for long term basis, we are going to use this Java serialization, that is to maintain storage for long term basis. So as I already told, so in order to maintain the data, okay, for the storage purposes for a long time, we are going to use the Java serializations. Okay, so which contains, the object contains the huge data, so that can be stored in a secondary storage device or some inner devices, right? So in a memory. So while storing and while retrieving, so what are the procedure you are going to follow? So that is the topic here. So that is in the first one, that is a Java serialization. So there you are going to use this Java serialization in order to store the data for the long period of time. Okay, so next we will see the next point in this one. So that is we are going to use read object and write object, and also we are going to use input stream, output stream. Okay, so here we are just going to use book and old operations just by see, what is the topic I have written here is, that is a point. So we have got a read object in order to read the elements, and we have got a write object to write the elements, and you have got input stream and the output stream in order to read the input contents and in order to print the output content. So in order to maintain the languages, means the languages is going to use like this. Whereas in our case study, library case study, so what we are going to use is, just we are going to use a keyword called serializable. Okay, so the concept here is we should avoid the conflicts. Okay, if you are providing the read and immediately there should not be a write. Okay, so if you are providing the write, there should not be a immediately read. Okay, so read operation is okay, so which is not a conflict, means which is not giving you the conflict, because read will be in a passive format, so just it is going to focus on the contents, means it is not going to focus on the modification, so that will not give rise to a conflicts. Whereas when you are going to combine write operation within a read and the write, so that will give rise to the problem. So in that condition, usually in all of the programming languages, what we are going to do, so in order to maintain that serializability, so we are going to use a read object, write object and so on. So this is actually one keyword, so there is no space between these two, like this. Okay, so read object and a write object, so where it is going to provide you the serializable operation. So you will be coming across, for example, if you have a two transaction 1 under transaction 2, okay, so under that you will be having some read operation, read on X. Okay, so next you will be having read on Y, like this. Okay, so then you will be having write X. In the same way here also, if you have a write X, so that will be the problem. Okay, so if you have read operation, there is no much issues. When you have the read write operation alternatively, so transaction and transaction 2 are both are affected. See here, so if you have a write X on this particular transaction 1, So and you have another transaction too with the same WX write operation. So both are means one after the other, immediately they are in a writing operations. So that will give rise to a conflicts. Okay. So in order to overcome those conflicts, some of the languages they are going to use the objects, okay, to read the object and the read object and the write objects. And the same way with respect to that, they are going to use the input stream and the output stream in order to overcome the conflicts. Okay. So it is going to dump the things that is to be placed into an input stream, and the things that is to be taken out should be in a output stream. So those kinds of keywords are taken in order to maintain the serializability. But here in this particular library case study, what we are going to use is, so that is for book and the old. So book means what? So it contains all the books that is present in the library system as a catalog, right? And the old, so which contain n numbers of words that can be placed on a book. So for these two classes provided, you can use the serializable keyword. So if you use that serializable keyword, so that's more than enough. So it is going to avoid the conflicts that is going to arise. Okay. So that is what explained here. So instead of this read write objects, input output streams and all, so if you just make the serializable keyword before the classes, then it is going to avoid the conflict. So that is what we are going to study in the Java serializations. Okay. So next we'll see that is the same topic. Under that, the next point, so under the storing and retrieving the library object, so that first point is a Java serialization. Now we'll see the second point in the same topic. That is storing the data. How to store the data? I'll write small coding for this one. So you can just see in this particular pseudo code what I have written. So now we are going to store the data. Okay. So for that what we have used is so I have a method called that is a save, which is of type void, means not returning anything. Okay. So you have got a if condition within that. So that is a library system. Okay. Dot save. It is calling the library system. Okay. So means you are going to have a library class, and within that you are going to call a method save. Okay. So within that, so when you call that method for this library class, so that is a save operation for this library. So it is going to print, that is output statement. Okay. So the library has been successfully saved. This was the message it is going to display. Okay. So if it is successful, so if you call that save method for this library class, so if it is going to update. Okay. So that is the library has been successfully saved. Okay. So if not, what it is going to do, it is going to present an error, that is there has been an error in a saving. So sometimes it is not going to be stored. So maybe some error, maybe the memory not present, memory out of bound. So such kinds of any issues. Okay. So in that kinds of issues, it is going to just display the message. So error in saving the library system. So why we need to save the library system? Because it contains the huge number of transactions, issuing member, deleting member, removing the member, okay, adding a books. So you have got so many operations, right? So in order to update all those data in a library system, so you can call up this function, so that is a save function, okay. So now we'll see so how we are going to maintain objects for the same, okay. So using the input and the output streams, so we are using a file as a variables. Excuse me. That is using a file variable now. So it is going to just retrieve the data after storage. It is going to retrieve. So that is, so you can just see here what I have written. So in order to output the same that is present in the library system. So now I need to take out the elements or data that is being dumped to a library system. For that what I have used, so file output stream, okay. So I have created an object for same, so that is as a pointer, so I am going to use a file, and I have allotted a that is default constructor. So within the constructor I have passed the parameterized value, so that is a parameterized constructor, so which is having that is a library data as a value that is being passed, okay. So means it is not been taking the default value, I am passing the value for that one, that is a library data. Now this file is going to point the library data, okay. So now we will see you are going to have another object creation, that is output, okay. So the name of the object is output, so which is of type object output stream, and I am going to pass this file, okay, which was pointing to a library data, so that I am passing as a parameter to this object output stream method, okay. So now it contains the same data, that is a library data. So means I am going to pass a value that is a library data, so which contains the details of the library system. So that will be there or pointed by this one file. So that will be passed as a parameters to object output stream, okay. So now what I am going to do, output dot write object, okay, means I am going to output the contents that is present in the library. So it is going to print out all the things, that is means all the information, all the details that is being added to a library system, library data with used, no. So that will be taken up here, that will be outputted, that will be written. So that is, it is going to return true, okay. After successful completion it is going to tell us the operation is true, it is being executed. So that is after storing the data. So we have seen how to write the serialization. So why we use the Java serialization? We use Java serialization to store the data for long term storage basis, right. So for that what we used, we suggested a keyword serializable. So instead of read object, write object, we use that ones, okay. So then what we did, we used a method called save, and then we saved a data to a library system. Now we need to retrieve that one. So for that we use the output stream as a operation, means object method. So there we created a object, that is a file and the output. So first we actually dumped the library data as a parameter, and which is pointed by a file, and the same will be passed to a parameter to a object out stream, and then that will be printed. Okay, so this is how we are going to have the storing and retrieving the data. Now we will see how to maintain the singleton property. Singleton property is nothing but maintaining the one instance for one class. Okay, one class maintaining the one single instance. Okay, so we will see that one, how we are going to maintain singleton property. I'll write up the code. See, in this one, in this coding part, so here what we are going to focus is maintaining the singleton property. Means we need to maintain one instance for each and every class. For one class you need to maintain one instance. So that is a concept. But what happens here, you can just see we have used the keyword called serialize, so which is going to maintain a one copy. Okay, so which is not going to give you the conflicts there. But you can also use a, that is a keyword called deserialize. Okay, so which is going to deserialize the thing what we have done. Okay, and it will revert back you to creation of a multiple instance. So we'll see how it is going to affect. First we'll see the coding part, and the respective diagram I'll write up. So what is the thing which is being taken place in each and every step. So very first one, so here in the beginning, so you can just see it has been created a instance called library, which is of type library. So you can just see, and it is having a library dot instance. It is calling a variable which has been created, object which has been created, library dot instance. Now what I am going to maintain, so the library which I created as an object here, so I am going to make a copy of the same thing of what I have created here. Okay, so I am going to maintain that instance copy in the disk. So that is why you have a statement, second statement, so that is serialize library, okay, onto a disk file library 1. Okay, I am using this library and I am copying the same with the another name, that is a library 1. So what happened now? So I add a instance called library. Now what I did, I used that library and copied to a disk, secondary storage device. So I renamed as a library 1. So another copy I maintained. Okay. So now we'll see, so what it is doing. So it is creating some another object, that is a library 2, okay. So what it is going to do, it is going to use a keyword, that is a deserialized version of the library 1. So it is actually reverting back the operation that is being performed here. So it is going to use the serialize operation, and it is telling that, so create a library, okay, with a library 1 in a disk, okay. Now I am creating a library 2, okay, by deserializing this library 1, okay. So that is, it is going to replace this library 1 with the library 2, or it is going to maintain, I cannot say it is a replace, it is going to maintain same exact copy of this library 1 in a library 2. Okay, so it is going to keep the simultaneous operation. So that should not be done. So that is what the topic, that is you need to maintain a singleton property. So that is the problem we are going to face when you are going to use the serialize keyword. So you have got deserialize also, so it is going to maintain duplicates like this. So you can just see now, so after doing all these statements here, so what is the updates, okay. So you have a update library, you are actually updating a library. So then you have got a add a member and another operation, update library, delete a member. For each and every operation you are going to use the update library functions there. So what is the output of this one, how it is going to affect, we will see with the diagrammatic representation. This is the step by step, the statement what I have written, I am showing with the diagrammatic representation. This is for line 1. In the same way, line 2, so let me explain what is the thing it is taking place here. So very first, so for this one, library with a library as a object. So you can just see here line number 1. So I have represented with this diagram. So you have got a library which created an object library. Okay, so that is a line 1. In a line 2, okay, so that is serialized library onto a disk file library 1. So we are going to take that library and we are going to have a library 1 file stored as a thing or an object in a disk. Okay, so that has been represented here. So here it is going to have a library, and here, okay, so that will be maintained in a disk, that is a library. Okay, and now in the third step, so that is in a line number 3. In line number 3, what we are doing? So in the line number 3, that is a library is created with the library 2. Okay, so this operation, so here you can just see in the diagram, okay, library 2, and then it is going to be deserialized version of a library. Okay, so this one, library 1. means what are all the contents that is present in the library 1 will be deserialized, or it will be taken as the library 2 content. So, you can just see in the diagram. So, actually library is having the object, so that is a library itself. So, it is going to maintain in a disk because of the statement 2 that is there in a line number 2. Okay. So, it is going to be in a disk. Okay. From that disk, what it has done? It has done a deserialized version of a library 1. Since it is called the deserialization version of library 1, so you can see the arrow mark here. So, it is moving from library to a that is a library to object. So, that is it is a deserialization, and here it is a serialization. Here there is no conflicts, but now it is reverting back the operation that is being present in the library system. Okay, so all the object, all the instance maintaining the same data, but the creation and assigning the values are conflicting. Okay, so that is the problem what we are going to face here. So that is how the importance of singleton. Okay, so that is what we need to explain here. So if you maintain a single operation, single instance for a class, that will be good. So if you maintain like this, so the multiple duplicates operations instance like this, so bit confusing, so it is not a good programming. So avoid these kinds of steps in a programming. So that is what we are going to suggest here. So it means you have advantages of serializable keyword, as well as you have the disadvantage with respect to deserializable keywords. Okay, so that is about the maintaining singleton property. Next, we will see how to deal with the static fields in a non-singletons. Okay, so if you have a non-singletons, means you have got so many instances in a class. Then if you have a static in that one, so how we are going to deal with the same. So that we will see with the coding part. Dealing with static fields in non-singletons, means which contains the multiple instance. Okay, so we will see that one. So here in this particular dealing with static fields in a non-singleton. So what happens here? So you have got a class that is a member ID server. Okay, the name of a class is a member ID server, which is going to implement the serializable concept. Okay, so serializable. And then you have got a that is a variable ID counter, so which is of type int. Okay, so and you have got a member ID server, that is a class. Okay, so which is of type static. Okay, so you have got a static there, and then that is going to have a server maintained. Okay, so now we are going to have a that is a member ID server. Okay, so member ID server, it is a method here which is a private, and it is going to use up a that is a ID counter. So that is a variable which is been initialized to 1. Okay, so that is it is going to update the ID counter, means each and every time it is going to update the ID counter. Next in the coding I will explain how it is going to be updated. So very first, what is the thing happening here is, so you have got a class, a member ID server, so which is going to implement the serializable. Okay, so which maintains the ID variable that is called as a ID counter, so which keeps on updating the counter value. So initially it is been updated with a 1, and the same class is made as a static. So then how it is going to maintain the singleton property. Okay, so when the class is maintained as a static, or a method is maintained as a static, so how it is going to maintain the singleton property. So that is what explained here. So in continuation with this coding, so we'll see the next lines. So that is you have got a public static member ID server instance. So within that you have got a if server compared with a null. Okay, so you have a server. So if it is having means 0 values, no value stored within that one, which is equal to null, then you are going to return a server with a new keyword, means which is going to allocate the memory. So for member ID server class, okay, which is going to create the default constructor, and it is going to maintain the pointer for the same as the object, that is a server, or else it is going to return the server which is already been used, or which is already been having the values, which is not empty. Okay, so if it is empty, then you are going to create a member ID server. So if it is not been created before, so means if it is already created, then you are going to return the already created server, otherwise you are going to create it. Okay, so then you are going to get the ID, so based on the method, that is a public int get ID method. So within that you can just see a ID, that is a ID counter variable used here. So in the initial coding, so I explained, no, so that is ID counter will be initialized to 1. Now in this method public int get ID, it is going to be updated. Okay, so each time it is going to be repeated with the statements, it is going to update the ID counter. So that is a server ID counters. Okay, so number of member ID that is being present or updated will be updated with the counters. Okay, so that is what represented in this one. So how we are going to maintain the static field. So it contains a 1 variables, and how to upload or how to apply the changes for that particular method. Okay, so that we have seen here in this particular logic. Okay, so that is about how we are going to have storing and retrieving the data in the library system. And the last that is you have got a discussion and further reading section. Okay, so that is not much important, but it's been added up in the syllabus. So how we are going to sum up the particular module 2. Okay, so this second module, what we have done here is, see, we have started from the analysis phase, right? So he has given a summary on this one in a discussion and further reading. So here, so he has given the complete summary of the module 2 what we have done till now. So very first what he has considered, so we are going to convert, so that is designs to a, or first we will start up with the analysis only. analysis to a conceptual classes, right? That is what the thing what we have done. So first what we did, so we analyzed the system. So how we analyzed? We analyzed using the requirements, so functional requirements, non-functional requirement. Before that, what is the requirement? So that is we need to collect from the user, or you can even collect from the document. So that was the thing we studied in the beginning of the second module, right? So we are going to take up that analysis phase, and then what we are going to do, we are going to convert into a conceptual classes. Conceptual classes are nothing but so identifying the classes that can be taken place in the programming. It's very difficult to identify the classes in object oriented programming. So that is the big task for us. So that is why we took up analysis phase. So where we come to know about the conceptual classes, designing the conceptual classes. After designing conceptual classes, what we done? So we moved on to a software classes. Software classes are nothing but adding the details. Okay, so adding details to the conceptual classes. So just in the beginning, so I had written up a class diagrams with a small attributes as a operations added to that one. So in the conceptual classes means after the sequence diagrams, so we studied a complete class diagrams in detail. So that is attributes, operations that can be implemented. So all this we studied in detail. So that I term as a software classes. Okay, so it is a next step to a conceptual classes. Next what we done, we designed it, that is implementation. Actually design will be coming in the first two phase itself. Then we did a implementation, that is the coding part, right? So he has first analyzed the system, then he moved on to a conceptual classes. After that conceptual classes, we tried up to writing the software classes, that is writing up the operations and the methods, what were the things we can add up, the multiple operations what we can perform. So all this we studied there in the software classes. So now what we did till now, so that is implementation. So how to write the coding part, pseudo code for the all the designs what we have done in a conceptual and the software classes. For that we ended up with the implementation part. So that is what he has given a summary here. So with this 3 steps, it is bit difficult to identify the classes and the objects in the object oriented programming. So it's very easy if you go on with this kinds of analysis, conceptual and the software classes, it helps you, right? So then how to go with the identifying the acceptable systems. So if you design like this, analysis, software classes, implementation, that's fine. So how to go with the acceptable system? So that is a non-functional and functional requirement we studied, right? So in that what we have studied, so that is non-functional means I told you. So apart from the execution of a system, so other related activity just like reliability, performance, portability, this all comes in the non-functional requirements. So here, so when you have got these all kinds of discussions regarding analysis, software class and implementation, so how to design a universally acceptable commercial systems. So for that what we need to consider is, it is a functional and the non-functional requirements. Before going to functional summary, so we will see non-functional requirement summary here. So he has taken few of the points to consider, that is the portability. So portability is nothing but the software what you have designed should not dependent on a system, or it should not depend any on particular software. So that is what it is going to focus, right? So we have used anyway Java programming, as you have seen. I have written all the coding in a Java programming only. So it allows you for the portable software. So means you can actually port the software what you have designed into a different systems. So there is no problem with the portability in a non-functional requirements. And the response time, so it is also be not a problem. Why? Because it is going to have a runtime condition means runtime performance. Okay, so it is going to give us a runtime performance. So that is why there is no issue with the response time also. So means when you submit the request, immediately it is going to process and it is going to give us the response. So this all non-functional requirements, there is no much complexity. So we are going to develop using the higher level languages. So as we have used the Java here, so there is no problem with respect to the portability or with the response times. Okay, so even we have studied across performance, okay, reliability, so all those kinds of things in a non-functional requirements. Okay, so what actually the functional requirement means, how I can enhance the functional requirements. So we'll see few of the points that can help us to write up the functional requirements in the future in a neat way. We have done a good functional requirements analysis, but we'll see some of the key points where we need to scrutinize and to have a good requirements writing. Should provide a large system methodologies, should provide additional features, variability with respect to the library means you can consider books, I remember, including sophisticated interface, allowing the remote access. Actually, in the beginning class, in the first session what we discussed, I just gave a definition of a functional requirements where it will be the interaction between the system and the system, or the system and the user, right. So it is going to be the activity that can be taken place within the system or with respect to the other systems. So now, so what are all the things I can add up in the functional requirements that I couldn't able to achieve in this particular module 2, and you can incorporate in your designs in the real world. So that is being suggested here. So very first one, in the functional requirement, what you need to consider is it should have a sufficiently large system. So you need to design a sufficiently large system that should have a methodologies. You should write a methodology in such a way that it should give a sufficiently large system. So in a library case study, so it was good, we have designed. So still if you have a more complicated system which is having a complexity, then you need to have a system so that can be supported with a good methodology. So that is in the first point it is going to focus. In the second one, that is add additional features. So if you want to add up the features other than the library case study what we have considered, so we have considered only the business processes, so the important process that can be taken place in the library system, so only that we have concentrated. If you want to have more additional features, so that can be added easily. It should be added easily. So you need to consider that requirements also, adding up the features, additional features, so more easily without any complexity. You should be able to add the things. So that you need to consider in a functional requirements. And variability in adding of the books and the member means you should have a variable kinds of features or data that can be accepted with respect to the books and the member. See, in the books there there may be any numbers, n numbers of books can be added, and the member also, there may be n numbers of huge member can be added. You should use a concept called variability. So you can vary, okay, so you can actually dynamically vary that one. So you should write the requirements in such a way that it should not be a stagnant for 100 members, for 200 members. That should not be the case. So it should be a variable one. So you should collect the requirements in such particular way, okay. So then sophisticated interfaces means, so that is nothing but your GUI. That is a graphical user interface. So everyone will be having the interface, so even they know how to design the interface for the software. So but designing the sophisticated interface design is a challenging one. So with the added functionalities, so we have added all this, adding books, adding books to a library, collections, everything we have seen. So still if you need to have sophisticated designs, you should able to do that one. So that you need to consider in the future. So adding up the still more sophisticated interface designs, okay. So that you can consider in the next in a real time implementations, okay. And allowing the remote access, actually we didn't study this one in the second module, that is allowing the remote access. I just focused on how to analyze the system, how to design the conceptual classes, how to implement the same. So just we analyzed this particular part. We didn't actually go for this one, allowing the remote access means a distributed system. So we didn't study this one. So this will be there in your fourth module. So means completely about handling with the distributed systems, okay. So there we are going to see how we are going to attain this requirement, that is allowing the remote access requirements in a fourth module. So he has explained very neatly there. So here we couldn't able to complete this requirements, okay. So these are the few of the requirements that is being suggested by the author to consider in your next designs, okay, how efficiently you can design. So we have considered few of the functional requirements and the non-functional requirements while studying in the second module. Now as suggested that is in the topic discussion and further reading, okay. So further you can implement these or incorporate these changes in a functional and the non-functional requirements, okay. So that is what the suggestion is. So that completes the second module. So we'll see the third module in the next session. Thank you.